Hello, and welcome to the new installment of Bean Steamers, being broadcast from Garbanzo Studios here in beautiful Southwest Ohio. And before we get going today, I'd like to say hello to Harold the baby Bigfoot and Sammy the hippopotamus. What great guys these guys are. Love having them here. Well, as promised last week, we're going to talk about traffic today. We might subtitle this, If My Car is Moving, I Must Still Be Alive. Maybe. Well, if you do any driving at all, in the country, in the city, or on expressways, you see the same thing I do. I always go about 5 miles an hour faster than the posted speed limit. For example, if the speed limit is 65 posted, try to keep it around 70. And people pass me like I'm standing still. On these expressways, some of these people are going 85, 90 miles an hour, weaving in and out of lanes like they were on an Indy track. And it doesn't make any difference what the conditions are. Rain, snow, ice, they don't slow down for anything. Well, just once I'd like to get passed by one of these professional go-fasters, and a few minutes later see them pulled over by the police, or maybe even see their car flipped over, with no one hurt, mind you. Also in my daily journey, I see at least 3 or 4 people texting while they're driving. Now, I don't know about where you live, but where I live, that's against the law. So the big question as I see it, where's the police? Where's a cop when you need one? Doesn't some city, municipality, or state police force see the potential for vast amounts of income from tickets being issued for all these blatant infractions? There's money to be made here. Why aren't they making it? Well, the truth of the matter is that people can do pretty much what they want when they're behind the wheel of a car. There's no one to stop them. Two recent incidents that come to mind that illustrate that people pretty much do what they feel like, regardless of how others are affected, happened to me just recently. The first one happened on a busy street in the northern part of the major city in southwest Ohio, which is where I happen to live, if you haven't figured it out by now. At one point, this road goes over an expressway of sorts. When I'm traveling north on this road, I stay in the right lane because there's a whole lot of people getting off the eastbound highway and turning left or north onto the road that I'm on. They stay in the left lane, which becomes a left-only turn lane at the next light. Most come off this baby expressway and stay in the left lane because they turn right at the next light, which leads them into a huge residential area. Me, I'm just going straight. Well, one day I was minding my own business, just going straight, and as I approached this part of the road where people were getting off the highway and turning left into the left-only lane, the traffic was really backed up. Worse than I'd ever seen in the left lane only. Now, about a third of the way down the exit ramp, I had a green light. So I went through the intersection, and about 50 yards past the light, I saw why the traffic was so backed up from the lane or into the turn lane. There was a driver in a late model electric type car that was straddling the lanes and had left about 50 feet in between their car and the car in front of them. 50 feet. What kind of self-centered, living in their own private Idaho kind of person does this? Well, the second event happened not too far from this very intersection. The place must be cursed. There's a strip mall on the northwest corner of this intersection, and the easiest way to exit this shopping area and proceed north on this busy street, as I would, is to weave around the southeast corner of the mini mall, go down a slight hill, ending up at a traffic light where you can turn left or north back onto the street. Well, one afternoon, as I was exiting in this fashion, I saw about 6 cars backed up from the light, which is unusual. There's never that many cars backed up at the light. Well, it wasn't too long before I saw why. A person in the lead position was stopped 15 feet from the wide white line that is on the road. It serves as a warning not to go past, which means that most people overshoot it by at least half a car length. But not this person. You could put a whole car in front of them and still not be at the line. Well, after about 5 minutes of waiting and a few people honking their horns, there's always horn honkers in every situation. I pulled my car off to the side and I walked down to the lead car that was 20 feet from the white line. I walked down to the lead car and I tapped gently on the window. If you would pull up to the line, I said, you would trip a detector planted in the road telling the light to change. If you don't pull up to the line, the light doesn't know you're here. You could sit here all day. Please pull up to the line. They complied and the light changed before I got halfway back to my car. However, one thing that really gets me is that fewer and fewer people seem to understand or comprehend what the word yield means. Nowhere is this more apparent than when the cars are merging onto an expressway system. Most of the time, I'm in the right lane, going about 5 miles an hour over the speed limit if I can, and I see a car coming down the entrance ramp with no turn signal on. Now, in all 50 states in this country that I have not driven and can be counted on one hand, there's Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Washington State, Oregon, Alaska, Louisiana, North Dakota. Oh, okay, that's two hands. The point is that those other 42 states that I have driven in, when you get on a freeway entrance ramp, they all have a sign posted. It says in big letters, yield. Now, this to anyone with a seemingly average desire to obey the law means one thing. You yield to the traffic already on the expressway. The idea of who's supposed to yield in this situation seems to have reversed. These people merging onto an expressway now think, for some inexplicable reason, that you're supposed to yield to them. Just applying a bit of common sense would cause one to say, where's the yield sign? Is it on the expressway 100 feet before the merge lane onto the main road? No, it's on the entrance ramp. That, in my playbook, would mean one thing. Them's on the ramp yields to us's on the expressway. It's not that tough. Now, the gist of this is that we need to rethink our traffic laws. And more importantly, the police need to come out of hiding and enforce these laws, letting no one off the hook. First of all, the names of violations have to be done away with. Speeding, gone. Assured clear distance, tossed. Driving left of center, out the tubes. You get the idea. From this point forward, there is only going to be one traffic violation: chronic idiocy. When you accumulate 10 chronic idiocy points, your license is suspended for life. No exceptions. Take an Uber. The scale of assigning points would be as follows. Illegal parking, 1 point. If it's in the handicap space, 5 points. Speeding, under 10 miles an hour, 2 points. 10 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, 5 points. More than 30 miles an hour over, 10 points. Take an Uber. Not using a turn signal, 5 points, which, by the way, is a traffic offense citable with a ticket in most countries in Europe. It's against the law to not use a turn signal. Not using a turn signal, 5 points. Causing an accident where no one is hurt, 7 points. Causing an accident where someone is hurt, 10 points. Take an Uber. Texting while driving, 10 points. Take an Uber. OVI or DUI or whatever they call it in your state, 10 points, 5 years in a clink, and a lifetime ban from Uber. Oh yeah, failure to yield, 1 chronic idiocy points. Minor details could be worked out, of course. You might think that this is excessive, but it would work with a solid backing. It would work in Iran, I'll tell you that. Another thing that I'm in awe over is roundabouts. In my little part of this great world, they seem to be very fashionable, which is the only descriptive word I can think of for this phenomenon. It certainly isn't practical, it's just fashionable. In the southwest Ohio town that I live in, there's a long thoroughfare that runs north-south with a good portion of it traversing an incorporated city whose name and good taste prohibits mentioning. Due to an atrociously high tax rate, they have money to burn. One year they tore up all the sidewalks in the business district and put down brick pavers. It looked pretty good. Several years later, they tore up the brick pavers and put down concrete. You get the idea. It's money to burn. Now, I just happened to know one of the fire department captains that worked for this municipality. And he told me, he was years ago, he has since retired, but he told me that at one point in time, this city had enough cash in the bank that they could buy every city employee a Ferrari. Money to burn. So, before we progress in this story, it would merit looking back on the history of this small, grand enclave. I was raised about 10 or 12 miles from the area that was now in question. When we all turned 18 in the late 1960s, one of the things that we were fond of doing was heading over to this area of town solely because it was considered the wrong side of the tracks. The bars were cheap and gritty. Some of them even featured go-go dancers. Sorry, if you're younger than 60, you'll have to look up what that is. It was dotted with mom and pop greasy diners that would serve you a cheeseburger at 3 o'clock in the morning. And if you knew the correct doors to knock on, you could still get into some after hour joints served alcohol till 6 a.m. For the most part, the police looked the other way. It was pretty heady stuff for a bunch of 18-year-olds. Then, as the years progressed and the town became more and more run down, some big time local developer got the smart idea to buy up whole neighborhoods, raise them, and put up McMansions. It didn't take long for the idea to catch on. Who wouldn't want to invest in cheap land with a maximum return from little effort? Before long, the remnants of the old slum city had all but disappeared, and it now enjoyed a newfound reputation as a high-class, nose-in-the-air place to live. A few remaining crumbling buildings of the old city are snapped up by the new city and tore down to level ground, awaiting a new structure that the city approved of. The main intersection of this area, which was once referred to as the crossroads, and which featured a four-way stop sign, now is a six-lane intersection with smoked glass office building, banks, and high-end coffee houses. If you want to spend $7 on some foo-foo coffee beverage, this is the place to be. And standing out like a sore thumb that's been hit by a 16-ounce framing hammer on the northwest corner of the intersection is a rundown block building that once served as a gas station in another life. I bought gas there many times over 50 years ago when it was 30 cents a gallon. The large glass windows in the front reveal a building stuffed to the gills with old auto parts and a sign in the window that proudly proclaims "In business since 1927." Of course, there's no longer any business being conducted in this building. The gas pumps have been taken out decades ago, and the original owners have long since passed away. But if you need spark plugs for a 42 Willys Jeep, my guess is that they're somewhere behind that lock and key and the piles of junk. The building and surrounding acreage is now owned by the family, and they have placed a for sale sign in the corner offering the whole parcel of 2.5 acres to the right buyer. This building is perhaps the biggest eyesore that the new city has in their sights. They won't offer fair market value for that parcel of land, and everyone knows that if a private buyer purchases it, the city will make it really difficult to develop just because they didn't get it. So it just sits there. next to the last memory of an urban ghetto of long ago, and a thorn in the side of the current local government. However, what many have forgotten about this small rundown building is there's another one block west of the main drag. Now, in 1969, this was the most notorious bar in the area, and not too many people know its history. I drive by it occasionally. It's currently a scuba diving shop, and I wonder how we all survived that time, coming out almost totally unscathed. I'm sure that the new city will catch up with it soon and completely sweep the grimy past under the carpet so no one will ever have to be reminded of it again. Anyway, enough history. Back to money to burn. This area of town once boasted a municipal airport that was owned by another entity. The city, whose boundaries the airport was in, was bought with the piles of cash by the city since they had money to burn, and promptly transformed the airport into a park with high-end restaurants, a concert venue, and a huge observation tower that is the highest point in the county. The southwest corner of the old airport was privately sold to a developer who broke ground on a housing subdivision that will eventually have over 100 houses starting at over $500,000 each. You would think that you would need a boatload of acreage to accommodate these 100 houses, but you don't. No doubt you've heard the term a postage stamp lot. Well, these are half stamp lots. The houses are so close together that you could almost pass a cup of borrowed sugar from house to house, handing out the windows. And where is the entrance to this new development of mini castles? It's on the north-south main road, of course. They would have put a light at the entrance, but that was not to be. Instead, what did they put? A roundabout, of course. To fully understand this folly, you have to get a mental picture of the road that the entrance to this 100 plus houses subdivision of 3,500 square foot homes with 7 feet of yard around them is on. At this point, the road is a two-lane street, one lane north, one lane south. The east entrance has an entrance to the subdivision, and the west side is a golf course. Now, in order to make room for this roundabout, they had to procure a section of land from the golf course, which was no big deal because the city owns the golf course as well. It's what they call a paper transaction, like the Beatles recording at Abbey Road Studios, which was owned by their record company, EMI. Cost of recording time was a paper transaction there as well. However, there was a restriction as to exactly how much land they could take without messing up the flow of the ninth hole, or maybe it's the 10th hole, I don't know. Who cares? Anyway, this ended up the smallest roundabout in the world. This is not DuPont Circle by any means. It's so small that delivery trucks can't make it through without their rear wheels going up into the center, which is this landscape extravaganza, making big ruts in the flowers and grass. Does anyone remember that this subdivision is under construction? There are now signs posted reading no trucks at a construction entrance. There is a back way in, but you really have to know your way around the area. And if you're just coming to work on a house for a week or so from the other end of town, you really don't know where that's at. So if that's not bad enough, you come out of the new subdivision, turn north, go up to the next stoplight and turn right or east, and go 2 stoplights down, and you find yourself at the entrance of this new park that used to be the airport we spoke of earlier. It currently is a stoplight on a 6-lane road, but not for long. The sign was posted the other day that work is soon about to begin on, you guessed it, a roundabout. After about 8 months of work, this roundabout was finally opened. It's a monster, and apparently done with no forethought. The landscape section in the middle is so high that you can't see the other side of the roundabout and who's coming into it. You don't see oncoming cars until they break the plane of the circle on your side. It's only a question of time before someone gets seriously hurt. If this roundabout craze hasn't infected your area of town yet, count yourself thankful. And if it has, I urge you to avoid them at all costs. People don't know how to drive in them, and your chances of being involved in a serious accident in one of these devilish mazes of concrete are astronomical. At each entrance to the main circle, there are signs posted that say only one word: yield. Now, to most people, especially those who are reasonably sane and pay attention to what goes on around them, this means one thing: yield. If you are inside of the circle, there are no yield signs as you pass the entrances to the circle. So, reasonably sane people, this means one thing: if you are in the circle, you have the right of way. Therefore, if you are entering the circle, you must yield to the ones who are in the circle. Hence, the yield signs posted as you enter the circle. This amazing concept, as practical, as constructive as it may be, is totally ignored by those who are in their own world as they drive on the nation's highways. In fact, some who are maneuvering these roundabouts are literally so far in their own world, you might say that they too are teetering on the edge of the solar system about to fall into deep space. They would be there fairly soon, I would think. That would be four things that are going into deep space. The others being Voyager 1 and 2, and the third having that guy in the grocery store staring at you while he blocks the aisle, and the people in the roundabouts. These people drive as though the yield signs were reversed. They stop in the middle of the circle people are entering. They've caused more than a few fender benders. In reality, these roundabouts are accident magnets, circles of death. I would suggest that if you see a sign posted in your community that they're adding a roundabout to your neighborhood, contact your local real estate agent, put your house on the market, and move farther out into the country. It's the only safe place that you can be. Now, an addendum to this story. I was driving out in a rural area the other day looking for a street that didn't exist. Being given the correct directions always has its advantages. As I approached what my GPS said was an intersection, I was completely caught off guard by the fact that there was not a stop sign there, but you guessed it, a roundabout. I think I'm going to move to Madagascar. I don't think there's any roundabouts there. Well, that's going to conclude our discussion of traffic on bean steamers this week. At this point, I will ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that little bell too for notifications. Be the first one on your block to have the new episode of Bean Steamers delivered right to your computer, iPad, iPhone, whatever. So, well, thank you again for being with us today. Next week, we're going to do part 2 of There Ought to Be a Law. There'll be a part 3 coming up in the future as well, but next week will be part 2. And as usual, the new episode of Bean Steamers is posted shortly after midnight Friday morning. It seems to be the best time to do it. So once again, thank you. Oh, and I wanted to show you my t-shirt that I was wearing today too. Let me stand up and turn around and show you what it says on the back. That's some free advertising for my buddy Joe over at Joseph Home Improvement in Morrow, Ohio. What a great guy. So thank you again for being here, and we will see you next week on Bean Steamers.